Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 357. Thank you for joining me today. Got a great podcast for you. Got a lot to share, and don't really know if I'm going to be able to get to everything. Like I never get to everything, but we are going to pick up where we left off in the last podcast. This is probably going to be a continuing series because there's so much that I still need to share, and this is an evolving narrative. It is a topic that is very prominent right now. The topic of Israel, the United States, and our relationship with Israel, the topic of the Jews and who the Jewish people are and what the Christian response should be to Israel and all that stuff. It's a very prominent story and part of the paradigm that we're living in right now. So I'm going to be discussing it. I have been discussing it, and I want to get back into it today. So in the last podcast, we were talking about world Jewry, the Jews around the world. There's 7 million people or 7 million Jews that live in the nation of Israel. But there's 8 million Jews that live around the world outside of Israel. The largest population of Jews is in Israel, but the second largest population of Jews is in the United States. There's 100,000 in France, hundreds of thousands in other parts of Europe, all over the world. We talked about the Bini Maneshi Jews in India. We talked about the Bukharan Jews in Central Asia, the Beta Israel Ethiopian Jews in Africa, and the Limba Jews in sub-Saharan Africa. And this is just a small group of people, different people from around the world that say that they are the descendants of Abraham and that they trace their heritage and lineage back to the original 13 tribes of Israel. Why do so many people have stories and tales that date back to this group of people, to the Jews from Israel all over the world? Because there is a inheritance that is associated with this group of people. There is not only the inheritance of the land, but there is a spiritual inheritance associated with these people. And that's why so many people have a tale that go back to the original 13 tribes. It's very important that you understand that. So I just wanted to start with that. This turning point events. So ever since Charlie Kirk was killed on September 10th, he had this schedule of universities that he was planning to hit before he was killed. The university there in Utah was only the first on the schedule, but he had all these universities that he had already had lined up that he was going to go to. And since he was killed in Utah, many people like J.D. Vance have been filling in for him. Tucker Carlson filled in for him. Megyn Kelly, Glenn Beck. I have some clips from Glenn Beck as well. Well, the latest was J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance was at the Turning Point event filling in for Charlie Kirk this week at the Ole Miss University in Oxford, Mississippi. And J.D. Vance is quite impressive. I have just a few clips that I want to play. I want to start with this clip. This is an Indian woman who tries to corner J.D. Vance and use, this is the way liberals argue. They don't understand logical fallacies and how to construct, reasoned, rational arguments. So they look for ends that they can get an in. And they know that this woman is an Indian woman. She knows that J.D. Vance's wife is Indian, so she's going to use that. She wants to use that as so she thinks that she can get an inside track to corner J.D. Vance by using that. And he just handles it so well. His answer, he just hits it out of the park. But there's a reason that I want to start with this clip, because I want to explain a phenomenon going on, this phenomenon that's going on that is driving much of the discussion around Israel. We'll just play the clip and I'll explain.
Hello, Mr. Vice President. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity to talk here today. I did not agree with many of the things that you said right ahead of this, but I don't think that's my point to discuss here. What I want to ask is, you are married to a woman who is not Christian. In her Wikipedia, I just looked that up. I wanted to know what her faith was. I didn't know this before. But she still calls herself Hindu. You are raising three kids in cultural, racial, religious household. How are you maintaining, or how are you teaching your kids not to keep your religion ahead of their mother's religion? Or how are you teaching them that your kind, they're that kind who got here just few years or few decades ago is different or is better than your mom's kind who got here just a generation before? How are you balancing that? And when you talk about too many immigrants here, when did you guys decide that number? Why did you sell us a dream? You made us spend our youth, our wealth in this country. And
so I have no idea what she's talking about here. So she first asked the question. It says that your wife's Indian, she's Hindu. You guys have 3 children. How are you raising your kids? Because you're Christian. J.D. Vance is Catholic. And he's just a recent convert to Catholicism. I don't know how long it's been, but he hasn't been Catholic his whole life. Recent convert into Catholicism. And she's asking him, first of all, how are you raising your kids? Because your wife is Indian. She is still Hindu. She's not Christian. And then again, she's using this as an end, to try to emotionally manipulate him and trap him. And then she goes into immigration and says that, why are you guys all of a sudden talking about capping immigration? I'm assuming that she's talking about Indian immigration and H-1Bs. She said that you sold us this dream. I don't know what she's talking about. You sold us this dream.
That number. Why did you sell us a dream? You made us spend our youth, our wealth in this country.
You made us spend our youth and our wealth in this country. Now, I just want to pause here because I want to point out what India gets from the United States annually in remittance. Where is that at? Sorry. Here it is. $37 billion. $37 billion is sent annually. And so in 2024. So this was last year. Last year, Indians sent $37 billion back to India. That's $37 billion, not in the United States economy, because we're employing Indians from India. $37 billion that Indians who are over here working on H-1B visas, that have immigrated here, whatever, have sent in last year, $37 billion in remittances back to India. And she's telling J.D. Vance, you made us waste our youth here. You sold us a dream. You made us waste our youth here, is what she says.
Here just a generation before. How are you balancing that? And when you talk about too many immigrants here, when did you guys decide that number? Why did you sell us a dream? You made us spend our youth, our wealth in this country and gave us a dream. You don't owe us anything. We have worked hard for it. Then how can you, as a vice president, stand there and say that we have too many of them now and we are going to take them
because we have too many of them now. Because we have too many of them now.
Who are here rightfully so by paying the money that you guys asked us. You gave us the path, and now how can you stop it and tell us we don't belong here anymore? And one more thing. One more thing.
Sure.
Do you have to
There's
be...
a lot there. I don't know if I'm going to remember all this, but I will try.
I'm sorry. I had to say all of this, and please take it with due... I'm saying all of this with due respect.
Go ahead. Please.
I have no intention of causing a scene here or anything, but...
We're not close to causing a scene, don't worry.
But we talked about Christianity, all of this. I'm not even Christian, and I'm here standing to show support. Why are we making Christianity one of the major things that you have to have in common to be one of you guys, to show that I love America just as much as you do? Why is that still a question? Why do I have to be a Christian?
Okay.
You don't have to be a Christian, lady.
There was a lot there, and I'm going to try to respond to as much of it as I can. So on the question of immigration. So first of all, I can believe that we should have lower immigration levels, but if the United States passed a law and made a promise to somebody, the United States, of course, has to honor that promise. Nobody's talking about that. I'm talking about people who came in violation of the laws of the United States of America, and I'm talking about in the future.
She's not even listening to his answer. Just lifting up her hand. She just wants to speak. She's not even listening to what he's saying.
Violation of the laws of the United States of America, and I'm talking about in the future reducing the number of people.
Yeah, it's time to reduce.
Sorry, what?
May I continue on that? Because when you just said you are not stopping with the people who came here legally, right? But you are pushing out policies that hurt us. And these policies are not even solving the problems. These policies are just creating chaos.
No, ma'am. Okay, so again, I'm gonna finish answering the question, and then if I've answered all 9 of your questions in less than 15 minutes, then we can keep on going. We got to have a little fun, right? So here's the thing. I can believe that the United States should lower its levels of immigration in the future, while also respecting that there are people who have come here through lawful immigration pathways that have contributed to the country. But just because one person or 10 people or 100 people came in legally and contributed to the United States of America, does that mean that we're thereby committed to let in 1 million or 10 million or 100 million people a year in the future? No, that's not right.
Great answer.
We cannot have, I'll go and finish. We cannot have an immigration policy where what was good for the country 50 or 60 years ago binds the country.
It wasn't good for the country 50 or 60 years ago. I wish they hadn't done it 50 or 60 years ago. The mass amount of immigrants that have been allowed into this country over the last 50 years has hurt the country. I'm sorry.
Right. We cannot have, I'll go and finish. We cannot have an immigration policy where what was good for the country 50 or 60 years ago binds the country inevitably for the future. There's too many people who want to come to the United States of America, and my job as vice president is not to look out for the interests of the whole world. It's to look out for the people of the United States.
Absolutely. Great answer. And he's insinuating, look at her with her hand up. He's insinuating too that it doesn't matter that my wife is Indian. I'm elected by, Trump got 77 million votes. If I have to, the interests of the 77 million people or the 350 million people, if I get elected to be president of the United States, to care for the interests of all those people. I can't make a political decision based on who my wife is and my family, or what the rest of the world thinks. I can't make political decisions based on what India thinks because they want us to have, unlimited amount of H-1B visas, and I should make that decision just because my wife is Indian. He says, no, my interests, and as a person who's elected by a majority of this country, millions of people, I have the interest of those people and the rest of the Americans in this country. Those are the interests that I need to be thinking about when I'm talking about making policy, not the makeup of my family. I think he hit it out of the park there.
Look out for the interests of the whole world. It's to look out for the people of the United States. Now, you asked a personal question about our interfaith household. And yes, my wife did not grow up Christian. I think it's fair to say that she grew up in a Hindu family, but not a particularly religious family in either direction. In fact, when I met my wife, we were both, I would consider myself an agnostic or an atheist, and that's what I think she would have considered herself as well. You know, everybody has to come to their own arrangement here. The way that we've come to our arrangement is she's my best friend. We talk to each other about this stuff. So we decided to raise our kids Christian. Our two oldest kids who go to school, they go to a Christian school. Our 8-year-old did his first communion about a year ago. That's the way that we have come to our arrangement. But thank you.
Democrats are in trouble.
My 8-year-old was also very proud of his first communion. Thank you, guys. I'll tell him that Ole Miss.
Democrats are in trouble. They don't have anyone who, I mean, this guy is, I'm telling you, I am really impressed by J.D. Vance. I don't think the Democrats have anybody who are going to be able to compete with this guy in 2028.
But thank you. My 8-year-old was also very proud of his first communion. Thank you, guys. I'll tell him that Ole Miss wishes him the best. But I think everybody has to have this own conversation when you're in a marriage. I mean, it's true for friends of mine who are in Protestant and Catholic marriages, friends of mine who are in, atheist and Christian marriages. You just got to talk to the only advice I can give is you just got to talk to the person that God has put you with, and you've got to make those decisions as a family unit. For us, it works out. Now, most Sundays, Usha will come with me to church. As I've told her, and I've said publicly, and I'll say now in front of 10,000 of my closest friends, do I hope eventually that she is somehow moved by the same thing that I was moved in by church? Yeah, I honestly do wish that, because I believe in the Christian gospel.
Great answer.
And I hope eventually my wife comes to see it the same way. But if she doesn't, then God says everybody has free will, and so that doesn't cause a problem for me. That's something you work out with your friends, with your family, with the person that you love. Again, one of the most important Christian principles is that you respect free will. Usha's closer to the priests who baptized me than maybe I am. They talk about this stuff. My attitude is you figure this stuff out as a family, and you trust in God to have a plan, and you try to follow it as best as you can. And that's what I try to do.
Great answer. And look, and she even, I wanted to play it all the way to the end because you can see at the end, she even starts applauding for him, be like everyone else, because the answer was just so great. He hit it out of the park. But the reason that I wanted to start with this clip, particularly about the part about immigration, is that people need to understand is that there is a growing, there's a growing sense of isolationism, particularly in the Republican Party. That's the way conservatives viewed America First when they first heard America First, is that it is, we're going to take care of America, we're going to isolate ourselves, not necessarily isolate ourselves, but in the interest of foreign policy, in the interest of immigration policy, that what is best for Americans is going to come first. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about H-1B visa recipients from India, or talking about funding the war in Ukraine. Many conservatives were against funding Ukraine, or anything that there is a growing thread of, and quite frankly, I'm an isolationist. I have this point of view, and I'm glad that it's growing in the conservative movement. But there is a growing sense of isolationism in the conservative Republican Party and the conservative movement, in the America First movement, and it's all about taking care of America first, focusing on America first. Our tax dollars not going out to fund foreign wars and to fund other countries. The $37.8 billion in remittances that went to India last year, not even counting all the other remittances that go to Mexico and all over the world. No, that we're in trouble right now. We just tripped over the $38 trillion mark in our debt. Particularly these young people are really struggling right now. They can't buy homes. Everything is unaffordable, and the young people, I guess they would be the Gen Zers. They're getting the brunt of this, and this is the cause. What caused this was the last, quite frankly, 25 years of foreign policy, immigration policy, and all of these things have forced these younger generations, and it's not only the younger generations, the Gen Zers and millennials, many Gen Xers like myself we are isolationists now. We want to focus on the United States. We want to focus on making things affordable here in the United States. And you can't do that if you're funding all these foreign wars and have an unfeathered open borders immigration policy. People have become more and more isolationist in the Republican Party. I quite frankly think that it's a good thing. But there's only one country that when you criticize as an isolationist, criticize the aid and the support that we give that country, does it turn into a accusation of racism or anti-Semitism? That you can that in the Republican Party, that the people who are isolationists like myself, nationalists like myself, America First like myself, the people that have been criticizing Ukraine aid or the Iraq war or H-1B visas. No one accuses you of being hateful because you oppose the war in Ukraine or that you oppose H-1B visas. They may say that you're xenophobic or whatever because they like to use these terms, to hang on you so they can discredit you. But only when you criticize Israel aid and aid to Israel and our support for Israel does it turn into you hate all Jews, you're anti-Semitic. And I just wanted to point that out because in this event that J.D. Vance did in Oxford, Mississippi at Ole Miss this week, he got several people that came and asked questions about Jews and our relationship with the not Jews, and I want to get away from conflating Jews with the nation of Israel. I want to get away from doing that because there's 7 million Jews that live in the nation of Israel, 8 million Jews that live outside of Israel. I mean, because I'm criticizing the nation of Israel doesn't mean that I hate all the Jews. So I want to get away from conflating, and that's what they want. They want to conflate criticism of Israel with criticism of Jews. So at every one of these events since Charlie Kirk was killed on September 10th, I told you that they've been continuing the tour. Different people are showing up to stand in Charlie Kirk's place. Prominent people: Glenn Beck, Megyn Kelly, J.D. Vance. So they're keeping the tour going, and inevitably, at every single one of these events, there are kids that are coming up to the microphone and they're asking questions about our relationship with Israel, our support for Israel. And people are calling it a rise in anti-Semitism, but it's not anti-Semitism. It's this threat of isolationism. They're not only criticizing Israel, they're criticizing our support of Ukraine. They're criticizing H-1B visas from India and all over the world. They're criticizing, immigration in general, but they're only getting the accusation that they're hateful and this accusation of anti-Semitism when they criticize Israel. So more and more of them are doing it. It happened this week in Oxford to J.D. Vance. And this is the guy, one of the people that brought this question up to J.D. Vance. Take a listen.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm a Christian man, and I'm just confused why that there's this notion that we might have owe Israel something, or that they're our greatest ally, or that we have to support this multi-$100 billion foreign aid package to Israel to cover this, to quote Charlie Kirk, ethnic cleansing in Gaza. I'm just confused why this idea has come around, considering the fact that not only does their religion not agree with ours, but also openly supports the prosecution of ours.
Persecution.
Yeah, so let me say a few things about this. First of all, when the President of the United States says America first, that means that he pursues the interests of Americans first. That is our entire foreign policy. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to have alliances, that you're not going to work with other countries from time to time. And that is what the president believes, is that Israel, sometimes they have similar interests to the United States and we're going to work with them in that case. Sometimes they don't have similar interests to the United States. And this example, the most recent Gaza peace plan that all of us have been working on very hard for the past few weeks, the president of the United States could only get that peace deal done by actually being willing to apply leverage to the state of Israel. So when people say that Israel is somehow manipulating or controlling the president of the United States, they're not controlling this president of the United States, which is one of the reasons why we'd be able to have some of the success that we've had in the Middle East. Now you ask about, sort of Jews disagreeing with Christians on certain religious ideas. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the realities is that Jews do not believe that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. Obviously, Christians do believe that. There are some significant theological disagreements between Christians and Jews. My attitude is, let's have those conversations. Let's have those disagreements when we have them. But if there are shared areas of interest, we ought to be willing to do that too. For example, one thing I really, really care about is the preservation of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. Christians believe that is the site where Jesus Christ was crucified, and also that his tomb is right there as well. My attitude is, if we can work with our friends in Israel to make sure that Christians have safe access to that site, that's an obvious area of common interest. I am fine with that. What I'm not okay with is any country coming before the interests of American citizens, and it is important for all of us, assuming we're American citizens, to put the interest of our own country first.
So great answer again. A lot of people criticized J.D. Vance for this answer and said that he should have jumped down the kid's throat and said, don't only say that Trump is not controlled by Israel. You need to say that all of our presidents, none of our presidents have been controlled by Israel. And people were really upset with this answer. I thought that it was a great answer. He's basically saying, he said that when we have common interests with Israel, we're going to work with Israel. And if we don't have common interests with Israel, then we're not going to work. I mean, I thought that not only did Trump apply pressure on Israel to end the war and get the hostages back, but even when Israel tried to attack the leaders of Hamas in Qatar, I mean, that basically, even the Biden administration was criticizing what was going on in the West Bank as far as seizing people's land in the West Bank. The Biden administration was critical of Israel in that regard. So I thought that this was a great answer, but I just wanted to point out that this is happening. Every single one of these events, that there is someone coming up and asking questions about Israel. It happened to Glenn Beck when Glenn Beck was at I think Glenn Beck was at a university in North Dakota when he subbed in for Charlie Kirk, University of North Dakota. Before I play Glenn Beck, I just want you to notice that this post is coming from Joel Webben. Webben is I think how you pronounce his last name. Joel Webben is a pastor of a church in Georgetown, Texas. Georgetown, I think, is just north of Austin. He's the lead pastor, and Pastor Joel is, I believe his church is Orthodox. They're Catholics as well. I just want to play a little clip from Pastor Joel real quick so you know who he is, and he's the one who posted this post from the Glenn Beck event in North Dakota. And then we're going to read what he says at the top of that post. But This is Pastor Joel from Georgetown, Texas.
That many of the Jewish people in AD 70, they saw it as the exact fulfillment to the words of Christ, and they realized in that moment, oh my goodness, he was right. We crucified our Messiah. And they actually got out. Many were destroyed and died in Jerusalem who did not believe. They stayed thinking, oh, we'll make it. God will defend us. They stayed and they were conquered and they died. But the ones who escaped, they escaped because they saw it as a fulfillment to Christ's words, and they believed, they heard and believed his words. And they said, whoa, this is what Jesus said would happen before us. This generation passed away. He actually was the Messiah, and we should believe in him, salvation. So they became Christians. And also we should practically obey him by getting out of Dodge. And so the Jews who lived were the Jews who became Christians. They converted to Christianity. They believed the words of Jesus and they fled. They escaped from that desolation in AD 70, and they mingled. Therefore, they no longer have a nation state, which means they're now refugees in other places. They committed themselves, this is the logical conclusion, committed themselves to the apostolic teaching of the New Testament that says it is not about one who is a Jew outwardly of the flesh, but inwardly, not circumcision of the flesh, but circumcision of the heart. So they no longer put stock in their Jewishness according to the flesh, believed that Jesus was the Messiah, converted to Christianity, escaped the judgment. All the ones who didn't have this heart change stayed and died in the judgment. And so now these guys, they're Christians, they're alive, and they're not putting stock in the flesh anymore, and they don't have a nation state to mingle in anymore. So they're dispersed, a dispersion among all these other Gentile countries, and they likely, logically, intermarried with them. And so who are the physical Jews today? Here it is. Nobody. Nobody. There are Palestinians. They've swabbed 2,000-year-old catacombs underneath Israel, and there are Palestinians that actually match up more than Ashkenazi Jews. And there are people who argue for the black Hebrew Israelites, and people who argue, well, the Caucasians, because they've dispersed them above the Caucasus Mountain. Here, I love all those views. You know why I love them? Not because I believe them. I love all those views because I love every time somebody comes to me and says, white people are actually the physical descendants. Black people are the descendants. Palestinians are the descendants. Ashkenazi Jews are the descendants. Or here's an alternative. Titus destroyed the temple. The birth records were literally kept in the temple so that God in his providence saw fit that no one would be able to prove who actually was a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Why?
So that's Pastor Joel. And what Pastor Joel is saying here in this clip, like I was saying in the beginning, why do so many people say that they descend from the original 13 tribes? Is because there's an inheritance associated with being a descendant, an offspring from these tribes. So who has what Pastor Joel is saying here is who has the rights to that inheritance? He says nobody. Nobody has rights to that inheritance. Now, what he says here is actually not true. He makes this relationship to 70 AD. 70 AD is when Titus invades Jerusalem and destroys the second temple. And he says that the Christians, the Jews that were there in Jerusalem that believed that Jesus was Messiah, that they got out of Jerusalem before Titus came in and destroyed the temple and killed a bunch of people. That's not true. That's not true. The revolts against the Romans, even after Titus destroyed the temple, continued until 132, 136. And the Bar Kokhba revolt was the last of the Jewish revolts against the Roman Empire. So even after Titus destroyed the temple in 70 AD, many Jews still stayed there in Jerusalem, even though it was in ruin, and they kept revolting against the Romans even up until 136. And the Bar Kokhba revolt is the event that actually scattered the diaspora after the destruction of the temple. It didn't really happen until 70 years later. As a matter of fact, there were Christian Jews and that lived in the region of Jerusalem and the surrounding area. Christian Jews, Messianic Jews in the 1st and 2nd century that lived there with non-believing Jews until the Bar Kokhba revolt. As a matter of fact, the Bar Kokhba revolt is what finally got these Christians to disperse, is because many of the Jews during the Bar Kokhba revolt were calling Bar Kokhba the Messiah and saying that he was the Messiah, and the Christian Jews there who believed Jesus was the Messiah, they said, no, Bar Kokhba is not the Messiah. So that's what scattered. So basically what I'm saying is that what he's saying here, what Pastor Joel is saying here is not historically true, but what he's making the case is that And then he says that after these Jews left Jerusalem and the surrounding area, which is current Israel, and the diaspora has spread more, that they intermarried and they went to all these areas, and that because of that reason, there are no descendants of the 13 tribes, and that nobody has the rights to that inheritance. So that's Pastor Joel. So Pastor Joel is the one who posts this video of Glenn Beck's appearance at the University of North Dakota, filling in for Charlie Kirk. And he says here, what Pastor Joel says here is, Judeo-Christianity is finished. The next generation will not be fooled as our fathers were. America first. Let me read that again. Judeo-Christianity is finished. The next generation will not be fooled as our fathers were. America first. Okay, so this is Glenn Beck getting the same line of questions about Israel as J.D. Vance got.
Israel has an overwhelming lobby over the United States government, and we have unconditionally supported them. We have fought their wars in the Middle East. Bibi Netanyahu came to our Congress in the 90s, told us a list of countries that we need to take out. Some were Syria, Iraq, Iran, Libya, etc. Through those wars, we have lost trillions of dollars. We have lost American servicemen.
We're lobbying everybody else, and they will...
No one's clapping.
They're screaming at him in North Dakota. They're screaming at, are you America first or Israel first? This is happening to everyone who, at each one of these turning point events, this is happening.
Everybody else, and they will...
No one's clapping. No one's clapping. Charlie was starting to notice about the Israel lobby.
Could I answer my question? Could I answer the question, please?
You're talking about one thing they don't teach in school? They don't teach about the USS Liberty, where Israel literally came, blew up an American ship because they want us to get in their war with Egypt, and they don't teach that in school. I mean, I'm just saying.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your question.
I have a question. Why is there this societal taboo around criticisms of Israel? For example, AIPAC doesn't have to register as a foreign lobby, but like the Australia lobby does. And it just...
That should be changed. That should be corrected. Look, I am not going to say Israel should have any special privileges. None.
All right, so that was Glenn Beck at his appearance at the University of North Dakota, or a university in North Dakota. That was the week before last, I believe. J.D. Vance got the same questions. Tucker Carlson, when he was at the University of Indiana. I think Tucker was at Indiana last week, and Glenn Beck was at North Dakota the week before, I think. So this is going on. This is a growing issue. This is what I'm telling you. This is a prominent topic of discussion right now in the United States. This is not going anywhere. This is a growing discussion. And Glenn Beck on his show the next day after his event at the University of North Dakota, he addresses this on his show. And I want to play a little bit of what Glenn Beck says here. Take a listen.
I want you to really hear me carefully. There is a grave, grave danger that is building. And I want to talk to you about it. I saw it last night with my own eyes in a very small number. I want to make this really clear. Very small number of students. I saw it last night. And
it's not a small number, and you're fooling yourself if you think it's a small number.
Very small number of students. I saw it last night, and I want to talk to you about it. But first, let me set it up with this. So Christopher Rufo wrote, on the right, many supporters of Israel, I think that would be you and me, many supporters of Israel, because I'm a supporter.
Okay, so I want to, before he reads Christopher Rufo's Substack, I want to just kind of break this down for you a little bit. So Christopher Rufo wrote this Substack that Glenn Beck is making reference to the day after his event at the University of North Dakota, where he says from a very small group. I mean, not everybody. It would have. You heard when the people were asking the questions that the entire audience was applauding. It wasn't just a small group. Maybe it was just a few people that asked the questions, but it seemed by the applause that many of the people that were there in the audience agreed with the questioning. Anyway, so Christopher Rufo writes this Substack. You can see it's October 8th. So I think this is before the deal to release the hostages and the agreement was made. Christopher Rufo writes this Substack, and it's titled "The Right Way to Fight Anti-Semitism." And this is the portion that Glenn Beck is getting ready to get into and read these 2 paragraphs. We are now 2 grueling years into this conflict. So he talks about the October 7th attack and all that in the first couple of paragraphs. We're now 2 grueling years into this conflict, and the public debate has changed. Critics allege that Israel is conducting a, in quotes, genocide. This is not true, but an increasingly large number of Americans believe it. On the right, the conservative movement, on the right, many supporters of Israel, including prominent Republican politicians, argue that America has a theological duty to support the Jewish state. Let me read that again. On the right, many supporters of Israel, including prominent Republican politicians, Ted Cruz and many more, argue that America has a theological duty to support the Jewish state. Their view is based on a complex interpretation of biblical prophecy, eschatology. Their view is based on a complex interpretation of biblical prophecy. As a Catholic, this is Rufo saying, as a Catholic, I find it mystifying. As a political analyst, I find it unconvincing. The using of the theological argument to get people to support Israel, saying that we have to support Israel because the Bible says that we should support Israel, like Ted Cruz says. He says that that's not convincing. As you know, that's not convincing. And as a Catholic, I find it mystifying. There's a reason that he says that. And everyone that he played so far has been Catholic. Played J.D. Vance, Catholic. We played Pastor Joel, Catholic. And this is an issue that you need to understand that is dividing the Christian church between Catholic and evangelicals, that this complex interpretation of biblical prophecy, this dispensational eschatology is something that is unique to evangelicals. Catholics don't believe that. As a Catholic, I find it mystifying. And as a political analyst, I find it unconvincing. The using of the Bible, the using of theology, the spiritual manipulation saying that you have to, as a Christian, support the nation of Israel. As a Catholic, I find it mystifying. As a political analyst, I find it unconvincing. So this is the Substack that Glenn Beck is making reference to on the morning after his event in North Dakota. Take a listen.
I want to make this really clear. Very small number of students. I saw it last night, and I want to talk to you about it. But first, let me set it up with this. So Christopher Rufo wrote, on the right, many supporters of Israel, I think that would be you and me, many supporters of Israel, because I'm a supporter, including prominent Republican politicians, argue that America has a theological duty to support the Jewish state. Now, I think personally, for me, I feel that's true. But what does that mean exactly? I'll get into it in a minute. Their view is based on a complex interpretation of Bible prophecy. As a Catholic, I find it mystifying. As a political analyst, I find it unconvincing. The other supporters would like to shut down critical analysis of the war altogether, equating criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism and suggesting those who question the wisdom of America's support should be unwelcome in polite society. I want you to know on the outset, absolutely wrong. Because you disagree with Israel does not make you an anti-Semite. It doesn't. It makes you a thinking human being. Honestly.
Thank you, Glenn. So this is a very important sticking point. This gets to, this is everything right here. What Rufo writes and what Glenn Beck is saying here. That just because yes, if you can say that I'm an isolationist because I don't want to support Israel or Ukraine or to have, unfeathered H-1Bs coming in from all over the world. You can say that I'm xenophobic. You can say whatever about me. But when I do the same thing and have the same criticism of Israel and American dollars going to Israel and supporting Israel when we're $38 trillion in debt, and criticizing their actions and their foreign policy, and criticizing what's going on in the West Bank, and criticizing their tactics in the war, that doesn't make me anti-Semitic. But if you are basing your whole argument on why the United States has to support Israel on this theological, on the fact that we have to, no matter what they do, because it's in the Bible, you're losing people. You're losing people.
Because you disagree with Israel does not make you an anti-Semite. Doesn't. It doesn't. It makes you a thinking human being, honestly. These moves might have been effective in the past, but not so much anymore. Instead of theological...
These moves might have been effective in the past, but they're not anymore. I mean, you hit the nail on the head with that one.
Anti-Semite. Doesn't. It doesn't. It makes you a thinking human being, honestly. These moves might have been effective in the past, but not so much anymore. Instead of theological or shame-based approaches, friends of Israel must frame their arguments in terms of America's national interest.
Yep. All right, let me just let him read that again.
These moves might have been effective in the past, but not so much anymore. Instead of theological or shame-based approaches, friends of Israel must frame their arguments in terms of America's national interest. 100% right.
100%. And make that. That's what I was getting at the end of last podcast when I was playing Ted Cruz. I mean, Ted Cruz, make that argument. You guys make the argument of why supporting Israel is in our national interest. Don't make the theological argument and the biblical argument. Make the argument that it's in our national interest and how it's in our national interest. And that's very important. So I want to get more into the fact that this divide within the Christian community is a divide between Catholics, Orthodox Christians, and evangelical dispensational Christians, and that what you see going on is a divide between Catholics and I don't want to even say Protestants, but Catholics and the evangelicals. Quite frankly, I've always had a problem with the word evangelical because every Christian is evangelical. You can't be Christian without being evangelical, because that's the essence of what Christianity is evangelizing and spreading of the faith. But the evangelical Christians are a branch of Christians that believe in dispensational eschatology. So that's where the divide is. So that I wanted to emphasize that, and I want to play Dr. Taylor Marshall. He was being interviewed by Jason Whitlock a few weeks ago, and he gets into that. And I just want to show that he's Catholic. Glenn Beck's Mormon. Rufo is Catholic, but the article that he's reading, Pastor Joel, who we listen to, is Catholic. J.D. Vance is Catholic. And I want you to listen to what Dr. Taylor Marshall says, who is a Catholic here.
One of the reasons why this is so controversial, Jason, is the Catholic Church has a very specific theological doctrine about the covenant with Abraham and the descendants of Abraham and the Holy Land and who are the heirs of the promise. In evangelicalism, it's very much dispensational. They kind of believe that God has sort of two plans, two peoples, Christians and the Jews. But the Catholic Church is very distinct on this. So is the Eastern Orthodox Church and a lot of maybe older line Protestants. And I think this has become a theological issue in this debate because it does regard Israel. I mean, the tweet from that Candace released, Charlie Kirk says, "It's leaving me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause."
Right.
That's 48 hours before he died. That is a huge thing for Turning Point USA. And Candace also released other texts with Charlie about, Catholicism and Israel. And so, I don't want to offend people or get too much into that. I mean, I'd be happy to do that with you, but
no. You can't offend people on this show. You can only enlighten or challenge or provoke thought, and I'm all for that. So
good.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think, a big breaking moment in the last several months was when Tucker Carlson was interviewing Ted Cruz. And Ted Cruz says, look, I learned in Sunday school, if you bless Israel, you'll be blessed. If you curse Israel, you'll be cursed. And Tucker Carlson, pushed back on him on that. It's from Genesis chapter 12. But for Christians, historically, and for Catholics, and for Eastern Orthodox, we interpret that through the lens of a book of the New Testament called Galatians. Galatians is perhaps the oldest book in the New Testament. It's written by St. Paul. And in Galatians 3:16, Paul says that God made the covenant with Abraham and his seed, singular. Paul makes a point, singular, not plural. And Paul says, what did God mean when he made a covenant with Abraham and his seed, single? He said that singular seed is Jesus Christ. That is, the blessings of the covenant, everything that God promised to Abraham is fulfilled, not in the seeds, the descendants, but in the one seed, Jesus Christ. That's Galatians 3:16.
So I want you to understand what Dr. Marshall is saying here. He's saying something, he's saying the exact same thing as what Pastor Joel was saying, that the inheritors, the people who inherit the inheritance from the 13 tribes are those who believe in Jesus. And he goes into Galatians and Romans, and that all comes from St. Paul. We're going to get into those New Testament verses in another podcast, but that is the case that he's making. He's making the case that who inherits the promises and the spiritual promises of the 13 tribes, who are the inheritors of that? People who believe in Jesus Christ is the case that Dr. Taylor is making. After doing Jason Whitlock's show, he went on his own a YouTube show, and he reinforced it on the show. I want you to listen to what he says here.
And since that side, whether they're Jewish, they're saying we've been owed this land for 3,000 years, it's divine mandate, or you have charismatics or evangelicals or megachurch saying, no, this is in the Bible, this is what Jesus wants. They're making theological arguments. And so now there's people on the other side of the aisle saying, okay, I hear you making the theological argument, Benjamin Netanyahu, and Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin. And then I hear evangelicals who are making the argument. They're televangelists, they're the mega church guys, they're big names. They're saying,
now understand what he's saying. Dr. Marshall is saying, it goes back to the Substack that Joel wrote. He says that they're making the argument that the reason that we have to support Israel is based on theological arguments, because the Bible says so. The Bible says that these people are the inheritors of the promise from the 13 tribes. And there's people that are making that argument from a theological perspective, not like Rufo says from the perspective of this is in our national security interests, and that this is the reason that it supports the America First agenda and people here in America to support it. No, it's a theological reason. You're theologically obligated, if you call yourself a Christian, based on the Bible, to support Israel. And this is what Dr. Marshall is outlining here, and he's rejecting.
Evangelicals,
Catholics don't believe that.
Who are making the argument? They're televangelists. They're the mega church guys. They're big names. They're saying, we have to give money. We have to support the state of Israel. It's a biblical mandate. If you bless Israel, you'll be blessed. If you curse Israel, you'll be cursed. So we're hearing theological arguments. So then we have to say, and I think this is part of the intellectual development of Candace Owens. I think it's part of the intellectual development of Charlie Kirk. I think it's part of the intellectual development of Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, Nick Fuentes, I think Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly. They're saying, okay, well, I come from a theological tradition as well. What is my theological tradition with respect to the covenant with Abraham Genesis 12, Genesis 15, and how does that relate to the New Testament? And you've got Protestants in there too, as well, particularly from the Calvinist Reformed side of things. And I'm starting to see Eastern Orthodox folks join in on the conversation. So what I want to do is I did this with Jason Whitlock just now.
He goes into the passages in Galatians, which we'll read later. I don't have much time. So I want to get back into Ted Cruz here. So this is Ted Cruz at John Hagee's church last week. And this is what he says again. And I think that this is so important.
But the danger that I want to highlight to you tonight is not anti-Semitism on the left. It is anti-Semitism on the right. And I'm here to tell you, in the last 6 months, I have seen anti-Semitism rising on the right in a way I have never seen it in my entire life. Listen, Kufi is extraordinary.
See, he's calling it anti-Semitism. He's calling it anti-Semitism because many of these kids, many Christians are now reevaluating their theological perspective on why we should support Israel. And he's calling it anti-Semitism. Oh, it's anti-Semitism.
Life.
And what did Glenn Beck say? Glenn Beck says that just because you have issues with Israel doesn't make you anti-Semitic. But that's what Ted Cruz is saying here, is that the people that have issues with Israel, they're anti-Semitic.
6 months. I have seen anti-Semitism rising on the right in a way I have never seen it in my entire life. Listen, Kufi is extraordinary. The work that Kufi does is desperately, desperately needed. But I'm here to tell you, the church is asleep right now. If I pick up my phone and send out a tweet, if I say good morning, within minutes I will have hundreds of blatantly anti-Semitic responses. When Prime Minister Netanyahu was here a few months ago, I sat down with him for a couple of hours. I raised this issue with him. And his first reaction was, he said, well, that's Qatar, that's Iran, they're paying for it, it's AstroTurf. And I said, Mr. Prime Minister, yes, but no. Yes, no. Qatar and Iran are clearly paying for it, and there are bots, and they are putting real money behind it. But I am telling you, this is real. It is organic. These are real human beings, and it is spreading. In the last year, we had 3 prominent voices on the right publicly muse, gosh, maybe Hitler wasn't that bad a guy after all.
I still don't know who these 3 individuals are he's talking about.
Yes, he was. He was the embodiment of evil.
But that's more manipulation, bringing up Hitler, too.
And I asked Prime Minister Netanyahu, I said, imagine how different American political history would have been if Rush Limbaugh had been an anti-Semite instead of a philo-Semite. We would have a fundamentally different country if Rush Limbaugh had spent years spreading poison. I want to tell especially folks that are no longer teenagers or in your 20s. This poison of anti-Semitism on the right, it is spreading with young people. It is gaining traction. Part of it is philosophical. There's an isolationism, so they will argue.
So he's saying, he identifies it as isolationism. Like I told you in the beginning, yes, there's a huge movement of isolationism in the conservative movement. It's actually part of the nationalist America First movement. That's the growth of the movement. It's isolationism. The same people that don't want to send Israel billions of dollars don't want to send Ukraine billions of dollars. They don't want all these H-1B visas coming over from India and all over the world. Yes, there's an isolationist. It has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. And he identifies it as isolationism, but then calls it anti-Semitism to discredit it. I mean, just let you understand what's going on here. The reason that they're calling this form of isolationism, the isolationism that says, is it in our interest to support Israel, just like the isolationism that says, is it in our interest to support Ukraine and any of these other countries that they use anti-Semitism to discredit the criticism of Israel and our support of Israel? They're making the theological argument.
It is gaining traction. Part of it is philosophical. There's an isolationism. So they will argue, what business do we have supporting Israel? Why should America support Israel? It's their problem. Let them deal with it. And let me give you an answer as someone elected to represent 31 million Texans and fight every day for your jobs, your freedom, and your safety and security. The United States supports Israel not because we are helping out a down-on-his-luck neighbor. We're not engaged in a charity act. The United States supports Israel because it is unequivocally in the national security interest of the United States to support Israel.
So he makes the national security argument, going back to Rufo's Substack, that a more convincing argument would be why it's in our national security interest. Let's have that debate. Why it's in our national security interest to support Israel, not the theological debate that we're biblically bound to support Israel. So he's there at the church, at Hagee's church, and he makes the argument, as he's calling people anti-Semitic, the national security argument, that the reason that we have to support Israel, it's in our interest because it's in our national security interest. But when he was sitting down with Tucker Carlson, he said that the number one reason that we got to support Israel is not because it's in our national security interest. He said this.
Where does my support for Israel come from? Number one, because biblically we are commanded to support Israel. But number two.
So biblically we are commanded to support Israel when he's sitting down with Tucker Carlson. Why didn't he make the national security argument to Tucker Carlson? Because that's Tucker Carlson's wheelhouse, national security. Tucker Carlson would have been able to have a conversation with him about the national security interests in Israel. But the theological debate, bringing up the Bible, how's Tucker Carlson supposed to argue with that? So he's at the church, at Hagee's church, saying that young people are becoming more isolationist, which equate to anti-Semitism. And the reason that we support Israel is because of national security. But when he's talking to Tucker Carlson, he says that we're biblically obligated to support Israel. And this is spiritual manipulation, people. This is spiritual manipulation. I want to play some clips. I'm almost done, of John Hagee, who is the pastor of the church. This is John Hagee here, pastor of the church that in San Antonio that Ted Cruz was at. And this is some of the things he said in interviews. Listen to a little bit of John Hagee.
You said God's foreign policy statement?
Yes.
God has foreign policy statements?
Absolutely.
And his is pro-Israel?
Concerning the Jewish people, that's his foreign policy statement.
God's foreign policy statement is concerning the people of Israel. That's God's foreign policy, not Israel's foreign policy, not America's foreign policy, not the Brits' foreign policy. This is God's foreign policy, is what Pastor Hagee says. Why don't you listen to this guy?
You should hear this verse. It's God's foreign policy statement toward Israel. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. This nuclear treaty is America's curse on the future of Israel. If our Congress does not vote this down, we must have a veto-proof bill, or we, the United States of America, are in direct line of fire to receive the judgment of God.
And if we don't do God's foreign policy, then we're in the direct line of fire to receive judgment from God. We don't do God's foreign policy and support Israel.
It is time for America to consider a military preemptive strike against Iran to prevent a nuclear holocaust in Israel and a nuclear attack.
It's God's foreign policy, is what Hagee says. This is what he's saying.
Early this morning, Israel revealed to the world what had long been suspected, that on the night between September the 5th and 6th, 2007, the IDF secretly sent its fighter jets into Syria and destroyed a nuclear reactor being built just north of Damascus.
It's God's foreign policy. That is God's foreign policy there, God's foreign policy.
President Obama's bad Iran deal is the most dangerous foreign policy challenge of our day.
It doesn't meet God's foreign policy. You understand what's going on here, folks? And I knew I wasn't going to get to everything. Still got a lot to share. I really wanted to get into Tucker Carlson's interview with Nick Fuentes because this was a huge deal this week, and they get into some of this stuff. We'll pick it up on the next podcast. I have so much to share with you guys. It's going to be forever talking about this, but I hope that you guys like it and that it interests you. I'll be back on Monday, and I hope you guys have a great weekend.